Hello and welcome to Mask Live. I am Michelle Cardini, co-founder of Mask, and I'm here today with Dr. Ryan Stoll from Arizona State University, and we will be talking about anxiety from A to Z for Gen Z. How can parents help our kids today, and what are the Gen Z kids worried about? From what we understand, it's from personal life stressors to issues in the news and issues in the nation. They have a lot going on. So we're here today to figure out how we can help them process everything that's going on, how we can help them with prevention and resiliency. And today, as I said, our guest is Dr. Ryan Stoll of Arizona State University. We're so excited to have him here to tap into his expertise. He is the co-creator of Compass for Courage, a gamified, evidence-based anxiety and prevention resilience building program for children and teens. So we will be live for the next 15 minutes. We welcome your questions. Feel free to join in and type up some questions on Facebook Live or Instagram, and we'll be sure to have Dr. Stoll answer any specific questions you have. Thank you so much for being here today, Dr. Stoll.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
We're thrilled. So we did a little bit of research. We have an entire issue, 72 pages cover to cover, based on anxiety from A to Z for Gen Z this quarter, our spring issue of Mask the magazine. And one of the things that we learned is that in 2018, the American Psychological Association conducted its 12th annual Stress in America survey to understand what causes stress. The Harris poll conducted the survey on behalf of APA among 3,400 respondents ages 18 and up living in the US. The survey results showed that the high-profile issues such as sexual harassment, gun violence are significant stressors for Gen Z. And we found that America's youngest adults are most likely of all generations to report poor mental health, and Gen Z is also significantly more likely to seek professional help for mental health issues. So Dr. Stoll, in your research and studies, does this coincide with what you've learned?
Absolutely. So it's important to think about anxiety and mental health problems in teens from how common and prevalent they are. And they are unfortunately very common, very prevalent, and only increasingly so. In 2009, there was a really big study around understanding how common mental health, anxiety and depression, conduct problems are in teens. And in 2009, the lifetime prevalence, meaning at some point in their life, they're going to develop some mental health disorder. The lifetime prevalence for mental health problems in adolescents then was about 31.5%, meaning 31.5% of teens back then were on a path or trajectory to develop a disorder at some point in their life. Now, that was about a decade ago, and it's only gotten increasingly more prevalent and more common, especially within teens and especially within our young people today.
Wow, so why? I know that's a big answer, but
it's a huge question. You know, it's a multitude of factors, of course, right? And part of it is we've gotten better at understanding mental health, diagnosing it, recognizing it. So that, of course, plays a role. The other side is there is just a lot going on in the world today, and technology, as great as it can be, has enabled this space where you can see into everything that's happening, all of the uncertainties, all of the stress, all of the stories of people experiencing trauma and hardships and challenges. And just by being exposed to those things at an increasing rate, just being constantly connected, you're plugged into a space where you're just seeing the stress and, you know, these uncertain moments and not knowing what will come next or what will happen next is going to create an environment where it's anxiety provoking. You're in a space where it's just, you're in an anxiety provoking space and lived experience at this point.
That makes so much sense. So I've heard people say that, you know, TikTok and the things that the kids are so involved in today is almost I don't want to say sensationalizing anxiety and depression, but it's certainly like what you just said, contributing to the fact that it's out there, that more and more people are talking about it. I suppose a lot of it is that it's more common and not such a stigma to talk about it. But what I wonder is how many people are out there, or how many teens or Gen Zs are out there saying, hey, you know what? I had all this trauma and I got through it, and it made me stronger and it built my character and it made me feel like I can tackle anything. Is there that going on, or is it more just where we have anxiety and depression and we're going down the rabbit hole a little bit?
It's a mixture, right? I think what's really great about social media to one extent, right, is the fact that it has opened up those channels of dialogue around mental health, around anxiety, depression, suicide, all of these major issues that teens, young adults, and kids are struggling with and, facing challenges with. So I think it's part of it is the Gen Zs are more open and sharing what they've experienced, their mental health, what they're encountering on their inner world. And at the same time, that stigma is still there around mental health. So it's this tension point right now where the generation that's coming up needs the support and they're vocalizing it. But it's also getting twisted around and just, having so much of that out there. But also, I think about social media and technology as a gateway of seeing all of the possible realities that exist. You see your friends and what they're doing. You see, people at your school and what they're doing and what they're saying, and you can't get out of it. You're in this system where you're constantly bombarded with other people's realities and stories. And I think it makes it a little challenging to find your own voice and share those stories in a way that can help move and bring that mental health aspect to the surface in ways that are positive and helpful, both to the person experiencing it, but also to the people around them as well.
That makes so much sense, especially with the developing brain, right? They have so many emotions and hormones going on that what they are seeing and processing and hearing is can be so heightened emotionally to them. So I guess for me to say, is it, can we talk about getting through it and building resilience and, you know, being stronger because of it? That's kind of a tall order, really, to think that their developing brains can get to that point, right? To process it to that level. It might be a bit of a tall order. I don't know, but in your so let's talk about the compass for courage. What kind of prevention tactics can we help these kids with?
Yeah, part of the idea of compass goes back to how we think about resilience. And resilience for us and the idea of our program isn't that it's an endpoint. It's not something that you have or don't have or are not. Resilience for us is more of a dynamic process of positive adaptation in the face of adversity or stress. So that means you can be resilient in one context, but maybe you're struggling in another, but that doesn't mean you're not resilient. So it's important to think about resilience in that way when we think about compass and what we do with prevention. Because the goal with prevention is to maximize the factors that promote resilience and reduce the factors that promote risk to disorder development and more significant mental health challenges. So for us, it's teaching basic mental health skills, relaxation, deep breathing, muscle relaxation and tension, things to help distract away from the anxiety just long enough to turn the dial down to then make a decision on how to act and not just avoid. The other side is working with kids on the big piece of developing self-efficacy for managing stress. I can do this. I can face it. I have the skills and I believe in myself. And then helping them recognize that they are not their thought. They can have a thought, they can have a worry, but just because they're experiencing that worry doesn't mean that worry is who they are or what makes them who they are.
Wow, this is beautiful information. I love it. Oh my gosh, so perfect. So that makes a lot of sense because, we all have that anxiety, right? At times. And I love that you said that resiliency isn't an end goal. We all have it. It's just you can capitalize on it at certain times better than other times because maybe your emotions are involved or your anxiety has kicked in or a little bit of a worry. And I just love the fact that you said that if we can catch the anxiety with breathing techniques or mindfulness or perhaps yoga or something and turn that dial down a little bit to recognize now what we have to constructively think about.
Yeah, and one thing I always want to emphasize when we talk about anxiety is the fact that anxiety is an emotion. It's an emotion like happiness, it's an emotion like sadness and anger. So when you think about anxiety as an emotion, emotions you can't just get rid of. It's not something we can just, okay, we have to do X, Y, and Z and we're going to get rid of it. Emotions don't work that way. But what we can do is we can learn and to live, master, and harness that anxiety to navigate the world and still master it. Just because we have the skills doesn't mean it goes away magically. It's an emotion. It's part of the lived experience of being human. To not have anxiety to an extent is a little bit like losing a piece of our humanity. So it's keeping that in mind with how we think about it and how we approach addressing it as something we need to master and learn to live with versus get rid of it. We don't need it. We don't want it. Get out of here.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. My gosh, I just love it. I think that when we have to wrap up our first 15 minutes, but when we come back, we're going to talk about in more detail, how to master that anxiety, how to live with it, how to realize that it doesn't have to go away, that there's not a magic button to push per se to make it go away. I think, a lot of kids today think, or adults, it's not just kids, we all think that, there's a quick fix. We're all in this instant gratification world. And so the quick fix is not necessarily a pill or, you go to yoga a few times and it's done, or perhaps you seek more deeper professional help and it isn't done in 2 or 3 sessions. So it's really like almost like a lifelong commitment, I would say, in many ways of dealing with emotions. And the other thing that came to mind when you just talked about anxiety being an emotion, we are taught as a society, and we talk about this in our spring issue of the magazine, that we really only talk about one emotion in this society, and that is happiness.
Mm-hmm.
So it's okay to not be happy. It's okay to have anxiety. It's okay to be working through things and to worry.
Definitely.
And so when we come back, we'll dive deeper into how we can help Gen Z process all their prevention, process what's going on, use the prevention tools that are out there, and mental health professionals in a productive way, and how to get the most out of it. So thank you all who have joined us today on Facebook Live and Instagram Live. You can find this podcast on the Mask Matters app, which is available for free in the App Store and on Google Play. And you can see this full episode in its entirety in a short amount of time. It will be available on the Mask Matters app. Thank you again for joining us.